Rudy here? Rudy's going to help me with the tape. But while I'm waiting for Rudy, if you can't see me back here, you'll be able to hear me. I'll stand out momentarily for some of you. You know, since this is the age of the micro, I feel my time has arrived. You know, small is not only beautiful, it's becoming powerful. I'm worried about the day when the chip becomes invisible. Then, standing next to Dick Lincoln here, I had to stand on a chair so we could be eyeball to eyeball. And I'm reminded that there's a recent study, I think came out of the University of Virginia, just a few weeks ago, about the rank discrimination that's affected short people in the world of business. Apparently they found out that after 5'4", I'm 5'3" and 3/4, that for every inch you're over 5'4", you earn $600 more a year. Then it drops down drastically because people who are up to that height don't want to be looked down upon. I can understand that. Before I get into my no frames, no boundaries, I know the hour is late, and some of you may or may not have sheets of paper that were just supposed to be distributed on your table, but you don't use your program. Do me a favor, if you're interested in some of the ideas, I only have 2 simple ideas to give you tonight, but I may say some other tangential things that might provoke you. On the first column, put down, this is a feedback sheet that I use with my students over the years, put down what I think he said. In the second column, put down what I think about what I think he said. And if you give me that, if you're interested enough in some things I say, I promise you, I'll write you a promissory note tonight that sometime next year or the year after, you'll get the third column filled out where I will tell you what I think about what you think about what you thought I said. I promise you. Give me that with your name and phone number. I might call you if I don't have the time to write. If you're on NCI mail or any of the electronic mail systems, let me have that too. And if you're good enough to do that for me, I'll send you a copy of my chapter and since I don't have time to cover it tonight, in the last CD-ROM book published by the Microsoft Press on CD-ROM, the Seamless Carpet of Knowledge and Learning, and another recent publication on the potentials of interactive technologies for education. I want you to know that when I talk about education, I'm not talking about training because I make no distinction between the two. And also, I'm not talking about schooling because schooling has very little to do with education. I'm talking about education. And let me give you a little history first about NSPI. I feel somewhat tonight like somewhat of an imposter. Not quite. But Gilbert Keats, Marco, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. You and your board. But I feel like Gilbert Keats Chesterton one day was strapping up his satchel in Battersea, London, which is a part of London. And a friend of his dropped in and said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to Battersea." "You're in Battersea." "No, I'm not in Battersea. I can't see Battersea. Fog of custom tradition is covered by all these. I'm going to go to Battersea by way of Edinburgh, Belfast, Paris, Madrid. And when I come back, I'll find Battersea. Yesterday, Bob Mager pulled me aside, good father Bob Mager, and said to me, "Gabe, be funny, entertaining, give us a little bit of depth, but no haranguing this time." I said, "Bob, I appreciate that. And as I look through your program, I want to tell you that I found Battersea again. I feel at home. I was a little castigating and critical, accuse you of narrowing your focus, becoming junior AERAs and ASTDs. 15, 20 years ago. And as I look through your program tonight, I was wrong. I want to take a lesson from our great leader, our national leader. Say I made a mistake. Although I'm not... Several years ago, I was introduced as a father of program instruction. I said, no, that's wrong. I said to the audience, that's not right. I'm not the father of program instruction. B.F. Skinner is the father of program instruction. Lieutenant General Briggs is the mother, and I was the midwife. When General Briggs left the Air Force Academy, that late, great man came down here, and I think he's one of the wisest men I ever met, worked with. He called me up, and he says, Gabe, how about leaving the academy, coming down and joining me here? This is 1961. This is just some history for you. Then I'll get into my theme. He called me down. He says, come on down, let's visit for a while. I visited. He says, Gabe, I'm running the largest training school in the world here. And we're entering the space age, and we're still using methodologies and training which go back to the Dark Ages. Will you help me to make a quantum jump in training? So, General, I says, I don't know. What the solution is, I'm not trained as a training person. I'm not strictly, I haven't, as a psychologist, I've been more or less clinically oriented. I come from the arts and humanities field, but I certainly am willing to look and see what we can do. And one day, Colonel Bob, who couldn't join us here tonight, was also one of our founders. We should put him on the list. Couldn't come because he's recuperating from a reset hip. He said to me, Gabe, let's go up to the American Management Association meeting in New York. There's a concept they call program instruction. I says, Bob, program instruction. I had a guy drop in for me from Crowder's people while I was at the Air Force Academy Psychology Department talking about teaching machines, and I kicked him out of the office. Well, let's go up and let's look at it. So we flew up, and I heard Leonard Silverne up there, and I heard Don Cook. A few other people. Bob and I came back. Let's try it. What do we got to lose? We set out to try the most extensive experiment in program instruction. Sue Markle will tell you, and I use her as my credibility, that we doubled the number of instructional programmers in the United States in 2 years. Instructional program writers. And that's a long history, and someday at some ISPI meeting, if I have a few hours, I'll tell you all about the trials and tribulations of being a midwife. Just because Lieutenant General Briggs was a 3-star general didn't mean he could order this into existence. He had a lot of problems, but he was committed. He was committed to the society. So how did we do it? Well, I called upon some simple preliminaries. No sexual connotation intended. And if I've been able to see further than others in this whole area, it's because I've been able to stand on the shoulders of these simple giants of people. I brought them down to ATC at their own expense to a great extent. I appealed to their patriotic duties, since we didn't have any money to speak of. Now I'll go down this list, some of whom have stayed with the society and continue to serve the cause. Don Toasty, Lloyd Homme, Tom Gilbert, David Klaus, Sue Markle, Bob Mager, Leonard Silverne, Norm Crowder, Ken Komoski, Lou Egan, Charlie Slack, Dempsey Pennington, Jack McKee, Peggy Pennington, Glenn Valentine, Bob Corrigan, Don Bullock, Joe Harless, Jim Evans, Bob Smith, Francis Megner, Harvey Block, Roger Kaufman. We gave them a platform, and they sold what I couldn't sell because I was a member of the family, and they helped me to sell. And they grew, I think, in the process, and we grew together with them. And we learned, and they learned. And the movement was launched. We started the society not as a professional society, which is what it's become. We started society, $2 was the membership. We'd pick up members off the streets. Because I felt then, and I still feel today, that our problem was that people did not understand program instruction. And we still have people who don't understand it. And Sue Markle developed the film on programming as a process, and it's still a process. It's a fundamental process. And it'll never leave us. And we can give a dog a bad name and hang him. We can throw out the baby with the bathwater if we're not careful. The organization of the environment so it can produce effective learning is what was embedded in that process. And what we have in the new technologies is the ability for these new powerful tools to amplify the process, to extend it. to embed it in our environment. God, Tom Gilbert. I disagree with you, sir, but my name is Gabriel. And you Trinity it's not the teaching machine today anymore that we're talking about. It is the environment as a machine. It is, in fact, what Joe Hollis is saying with respect to front-end analysis. It's going to become more and more so. And training as we know it, and I know you're all involved in training, is going to disappear. Training is going to become transparent because of these powerful tools. This ubiquitous computer that is this microprocessor, this powerful little chip that is weaving itself into every facet of our existence. It's changing the very face of our society. We may or may not be aware of it, but it is. I'm a man whose mind is easily boggled. You see, I still go through the supermarket and Giants, and my mind is boggled. I buy and I'm shocked later at the prices. But then I go through a supermarket chain in Atlanta, and I'm not boggled after I get I'm not shocked after I get the prices, because what happens is I hear 3 pounds of bananas at 35 cents a pound. And I'm not illiterate, though. That's just nice to hear it at that time. All right? We're going to talk to these machines, and they're going to talk back to us. I'm jumping the gun. I have a database here. I'm not going to get to it. I'll send it to you in some kind of written form later. But let me give you an example. All right? Let me give you an expert system that someday is going to be done, and George Orwell's voice will be on that system. It'll be digitized from one of his documentaries or films. So the words will be reconstructed. It'll still be his voice. And I'm composing a letter in my word processing. And I say, and the man was very tall. And George Orwell's voice comes up and says, Gabriel, you don't have to say very tall. Just say the man was tall. Very is unnecessary. It's not as forceful as saying he was tall. Well, I don't agree with you, George. I like very tall. Well, okay, you're obviously a better writer than I am, Gabriel, so go on. Do what you want to do. Those are just some scenarios. All right, I have a lot of other scenarios which appear in my effort to read Hofstadter's book, The Metamagical Themes. I'm not going to ask you how many of you bought the book with the idea you could breeze through it. You can't breeze through it. But you know, if I had it on a CD-ROM where I could access all kinds of words, where I could roam the domain, which is a more proper format for Hofstadter's book. Look, every tool that we develop has its limitations. And I don't know what your 50th anniversary will be like. I hope you'll invite me back. I'll be 93. That'll be the year 2012. But I hope you will become more and more attuned to the developments, more so than you even are today. We're just starting to scratch the surface of artificial intelligence. We're just starting to scratch the surface of expert systems. We're just starting to scratch the surface of bringing about and composing the sensory modalities we need to impact on the learner. The concept of performance itself must be broadened to include, because the change in the workplace is going to open up new avenues for you where performance is not going to be necessary on the job, because automation will take over performance on the job and productivity on the job. But there's a whole arena out there outside of the job, life itself, that involves performance of all natures. Performance of children, performance of senior citizens, performance of adults in all walks and facets of life. We're in a world of change. There's a lot of volatility in our environment. We can't grasp it. I've been tracking 20 new areas of new technologies since I've left you in the last 20 years, 15 years. And I can't keep up with them. I've been trying to communicate to myself first and then to others, non-technical executives, what they mean. But I'm 68 now. I was 48 when I was addressing the Cable Television Association in San Francisco. Do all you know where cable TV was in '68? Where I was castigating the media barons, saying the day will come when we can watch anything we want, at any time we want, in any form we want. And my daughter, who then was 8, she's now 28, I said, Rebecca, stand up. Here this little girl stood up with her mother, seated beside her mother, in this room of 2,000, you remember, Bess. Hold up your mother's purse. And I'm quoted Margaret Mead at that time. I don't know what kind of a world it'll be. Margaret Mead said, no man shall live today in the world in which he was born. Well, at that time I said, no man shall live today, shall grow up in the world in which he was born, go to school in the world in which he grew up, go to work in the world in which he went to school, and die in the world in which he worked. Well, a few weeks ago I was saying, no man shall be born in the world in which he was conceived. But after attending and speaking at the Microsoft conference on CD-ROM a few days ago, another powerful tool, CD-ROM, and now compact digitized video interactive, which is on a compact disc, 72 minutes of full motion. I don't have time to go into it now. Father Long come to me and said, Gabe, that's no longer apropos about being born in a different world than in which he was conceived. No man shall be fertilized in the world in which his father knew his mother, and to use it as a biblical phrase. So the exponential rate of change. And what's happening? Because we're breaking down these boundaries between disciplines. It was Alfred North Whitehead who said several decades ago, we teach algebra from which nothing follows, geometry from which nothing follows, philosophy from which nothing follows, sociology from which nothing follows. We've created these disciplines, they're artificial disciplines, but the trouble is, these were very useful taxonomies and classifications and creations. There was a time when the course syllabi and the course curriculum was useful. But you can't tell the Society for Curriculum Development that it's already passé. I don't know what curriculum means anymore. I'd love to see the curriculum in some school which is only a set of objectives. Behavioral objectives, of course. I turned out 50 PhDs at Catholic University, and they're my 50 behavioral objectives. You know, I was at 3 schools at the university in Washington, Catholic, American, and Howard. I gave up a tenured appointment at the first 2 and retired with a tenured appointment at the 3rd. And I batted 100%. I had no impact on my colleagues at all 3 universities. It's a different world out there, and please keep your mind open tonight and not at both ends. Charlie, you know, Bob Glazier, when I took my first course in program instruction, said, I'm here to talk, you're here to listen. If you stop before I do, please raise your hand. And I never forgot that. And my new phrase is, I compute, therefore I am. So what's happened in the last 10 years? The video disc was developed just 8 years ago. The audio compact disc had its beginning only 4 years ago. If I asked you if any of you know what a compact disc here, you'd all raise your hands. 4 years ago, not a single one would have raised your hands. CD-ROM, 250,000 pages. What does that mean to us? Look here. What is it? Just be patient with me. Well, here it is. Laser card, 2 megabytes. Your whole medical history will be on it. What does it mean to you? I understand now that every byte is separated by 5 microns. I don't know what a micron is. I've never seen one. So one of the, I'm curious, how big is a micron?
The distance between a sperm and an egg.
I got a better one. This friend of mine says, Gabe, hold your thumb in front of your face. Look at it for 45 minutes. It'll grow 1 micron. Now that's communicating. All right. So where are we? We're in a world that we don't understand, where things are happening that we can't grab hold of. And what does this do for the people who are designing instruction, designing learning experiences? To bring about a variation on the theme by Mager, learner-controlled instruction. Learner-controlled instruction, my God, with embedded training, embedded learning materials in every facet of our environment. I think our job as designers is to create options for the learner that he never thought he could have and transfer the whole learning process to the learner through the tools. And our children are telling us that. My consultant 2 years ago was my 17-year-old grandson who was 15 on the computer. I was paying him $7 an hour, $6 an hour. And one day he says, "Grandpa, I give up. I can't deal with you. You got to read the documentation." I said, "Andrew, I can't understand the documentation. You don't read the documentation." He said, "I don't have to read the documentation. You have to read it." I said, "I'll pay you $10 an hour." He says, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do it." You know what happens to my ego when that screen freezes on me? Have these people never heard of developmental testing? Where's the user in our laboratories? We used to say in program learning that the student really wrote the program. What happened to that bit of pedagogical wisdom with the people who are writing computer programs? And what have we done in computers? We've transferred true and false and multiple choice tests. My God. With all the opportunities to do variations on criterion reference testing. Look, we got powerful tools that can help us drive our imaginations. There is a single invention we've had in the history of mankind where the inventor understood the potential of the invention. We're still just now tapping the resources of the telephone. And what happens when that telephone will contain a mainframe microchip in it? And that's not too far. So I go back to my daughter. Hold up here. What kind of a world will Rebecca be in when she's my age of 48? That's 20 years from now. I was projecting that for the year 2007. Not the year 2012 when I'm coming back to ISPI. Okay? Because some genetic engineering is going to come through to help me. Okay? There's some interesting work going on at the Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at MIT where they're going to clone brains so you can transfer them to new bodies after your body wears out. Seriously. I'm not talking facetiously here. If you want to read something that's really provocative, read Marvin Minsky's new book. When you give up on Hofstadter, read Marvin Minsky's The Society of the Mind. So what kind of a world is it going to be? I don't know, I said. It's going to be a completely different world than my world today. I can't imagine what it is. People say to me, one day I was introduced as the prophet of the future. I have no idea what the future is going to be like. I'm not a futurist. In fact, in my more rational moments, I don't think we'll all have a future. I really feel that sometimes when I'm rational. But I have hope. So I don't know what kind of a world it's going to be, but the only thing I know, there will be one similarity between her world then and my world today. Our schools will be the same. If the schools don't change, if the schools change, the universities will be the same. You know, the media is changing too. There was an old philosopher in my younger years, which some of you may not remember, called Fred Allen. He said something that had a lot of wisdom to it. Imitation is the highest form of television. Well, now with interactive television, with kids having toys that interact with the TV set, where we embed the signal that activates the toy, in one of the stereo tracks, and then we use the blanking interval, whatever else they call it. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. All I know is what happens. It works. They use for video text. We can now have, can you imagine someone working with Square One Television or Sesame Street, some kid with a magic wand, where television becomes interactive? Just 2 years ago, the Right Once optical disc became available. Last year saw a release of spin-offs from the compact disc like CD-ROM. And now we have compact disc interactive on the horizon. Many shockwaves going through that industry. So I said, one thing I know, that Rebecca's children, if the government will let her have children by then, will be carrying a little black box the size of her mother's purse. And that black box, remember I was projecting this for the year 2007. I'm not a prophet of the future, I'm a prophet of the present. I try to detect the intractable trends that are all around us and try to find them and see how we can extrapolate from them, even though they're all around us, to our problem of education training. And that's where all these other giants that help me in my own thinking, starting with program learning. And we'll be able to she will be able to receive in that little receiver audio-visual information from any part of this world. Well, it's not the year 2007, it's the year 1987. How many of you saw the Live Aid concert? What a tremendous feat that was. All the regulations that prevented that from happening, but it happened. Synchronous graphics from all over the world involving 110 countries. Even Russia was involved with us. And I can't go through all the technologies that are impacting within this wide rubric I call interactive technologies. You know, interactive is a buzzword today among these isolated groups. Well, interaction was first articulated by B.F. Skinner the day he walked into his 8-year-old girl's classroom in the early 50s and said, my God, my pigeons get more interaction in 20 minutes than she gets all year with her teacher. And now we're talking interaction this, International Interactive Communication Society, interactive video disc, interactive. All right, no frames, no boundaries. We've got to get rid of we've got to be able to step out of our mental models. Step away and think in new ways about the new problems that are facing us. Can we do that? You know, we start out as revolutionaries, we become traditionalists. That's how we started this society. 25 years now, are we getting in the groove? Are we able to shift? Are we able to see the world from a different perspective? Can I have the lights, please? Just want to show you one. I won't show you the other tapes. Just want to show you this one. I know the hour's late. Could I have the lights, please?
World War III is inevitable.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
Thousands of people, almost 10 years, and billions of dollars to lift a human being into space. Russell Schweikert, lunar module pilot for the Apollo 9 flight.
It was a late Russell Schweikert. He died several years ago.
You go around it in an hour
begin to recognize that your identity is with that whole thing. And that makes a change. And you look down there and you can't imagine how many borders and boundaries you cross again and again and again. And you don't even see them. From where you see it, the thing is a whole, and it's so beautiful. And you recall standing out there, the spectacle that went before your eyes. Because now you're no longer inside something with a window looking out at a picture. But now you're out there, and there are no limits to it. There are no frames. There are no boundaries. There are no frames. There are no boundaries. And you think about what you're experiencing and why. Do you deserve this fantastic experience? Are you separated out to be touched by God, to have some special experience here that other men cannot have? And you know the answer to that is no. You know very well at that moment, and it comes through to you so powerfully that you're the sensing element for man.
The sensing element. From that immense perspective of outer space, we can gain an insight into mankind's true relationship with the universe, with planet Earth, and with all life as we know it. A new perspective for all humanity, a perspective for what Einstein had called a new mode of thinking.
There you are, hundreds of people killing each other over some imaginary line that you're not even aware of, that you can't see. And from where you see it, the thing is a whole, and it's so beautiful. And you wish you could take one in each hand and say, look at it from this perspective. Look at that. What's important? And you realize that on that small spot, that little blue and white thing is everything that means anything to you. All of history and music and poetry and art and birth and love, tears, joy, games, all of it on that little spot out there that you can cover with your thumb. You look down and you see that surface of that globe that you've lived on all this time, and you know all those people down there, and they are like you, they are you, and somehow you represent them. You are up there as the sensing element, and that's a humbling feeling. And somehow you recognize that you're a piece of this total life.
This sense of interconnectedness, interdependence, has been spoken of in every language and faith since the beginning. Buddhism.
自分に害を与えるようなものは hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful.
Hinduism.
किसी से ऐसा व्यवहार न करो. Do not unto others what would cause you pain if done to you.
Judaism.
Ma shesanu el reacha. What is hateful to you, do not do to others.
Taoism.
我邻人所获得的，也是我所获得的。Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss.
Christianity.
All things whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, do ye even so unto them.
Islam.
ایمان نیاورده تا هنگامی که آنچه برای خود می‌خواهید. No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself.
The genius of the ancients and the most modern scientific knowledge agree. The microcosm and the macrocosm are one interconnected, unified system. And we are one human family. We live on one earth. We breathe the same air, drink the same water. We have the same needs and hopes and dreams. We will move forward now with a new spirit of inclusiveness and cooperation toward all people, all nations, all races, and all religions, understanding each other's frames and boundaries. Then we can begin to bring about a world where people can live and work together in peace, on a planet surrounded not by fire, but by a spirit of goodwill for all life.
Okay, thank you. Will you take that up, please? Lights, please. ISU, that's with the courtesy of the Beyond War Group. The Beyond War Group is asking for a new way of thinking. Vannevar Bush wrote an article in June 1945 in the Atlantic Monthly called As We May Think, where he talked about the mimics, where I can cross the boundaries of the various databases and get the kind of knowledge I need when I want it. Look, you know, one of my favorite writers, because he upsets me so much, is George Will. And recently he wrote a very superficial article about the superficiality of Warhol. But George Will likes to quote words that people who read don't understand, especially in Latin. You know, there was a time when I grew up going to school where it was said that if you can't read the Latin inscription on top of the library, you're not educated. How many of you are educated tonight? But anyway, George is talking about Warhol. Then he said, de mortuis nil nisi bonum. Of course, he says. Of course? What do you mean, of course? I got that translated for me from a consultant. But you see, if I had the CD-ROM with an icon, all I had to do is push an icon. Immediately I get the translation. There, George Will, I don't need you and your damn pontification. You know what George Will reminds me of? Gilbert and Sullivan's ditty in Patience. Oh, this deep young man expresses himself in words too deep for me. What a very singularly deep young man this deep young man must be. All right. Albert Einstein said we should make things as simple as possible, only not any simpler. You know, simplicity in the handling of the language. Maybe extend beyond words. Look, I tape record my lectures. I didn't tape them tonight. I used to tape record them and take them home from school and play them on my car radio as I go into the battle zone of Northeast Washington. And I'm amazed at the things I learn from the things I hear myself say at times. Since Skinner says so very appropriately, thinking is verbal behavior, you know. Since we college professors do all the talking, we do all the thinking. And our students can't get a word in edgewise. But one night, about 15 years ago, I found myself lecturing about the evils of lecturing. And I brought the car to a sudden stop. I said, what the hell are you doing? And I stopped lecturing from that day, and all my personality needs were starving till I come to places like this where I can talk. My personality needs were malnourished, but you know, my students' learning went way up. They didn't like it, but it went way up. So we go back to that great thinker who was a very poor manager, John Gardner. To accomplish renewal, he says, and I'll leave this with you tonight, we need to understand what prevents it. When we talk about revitalizing a society, even an ISPI, we tend to put exclusive emphasis on finding new ideas. But there's usually no shortage of new ideas. The problem is to get a hearing for them. So I ask you, one of the reasons society started was to give a hearing to program instruction to the layman. Bring the layman back into your midst. Bring the users back into your midst. Maybe those children who have not contaminated their learning experiences by experience will bring us new ideas if we can bring them in. Maybe we should watch them, bring them into our laboratories, work with them. Maybe we should bring the user in. Maybe we should bring in some of our own lessons, which I haven't heard very much about, developmental testing, the iterative process. Maybe we need to extend our ideas. As I heard Tom Gilbert talk today in his brilliant manner about job aids, I said to myself, my God, what I could do with the proliferation of job aids with the microcomputer in ways I never thought possible before. Because the universe itself, the environment, will have infinite number of aids available, and when I need them, at the time I need them. So there's no problems to get a hearing for these ideas, and that means breaking through the crusty rigidity and stubborn complacency of the status quo. Development of resistance to new ideas is a familiar process in the individual. The infant is our model, and we should look to that infant to break out our own model, because the infant is open to new ideas, to new experiences, to he's receptive, curious, eager, unafraid, willing to try anything. And as the years pass, these priceless qualities fade. There is nothing more open than the elementary primary school, and nothing more closed than the university graduate program. We lose. We say, we want to teach people how to think. We haven't even know what thinking is yet. We want to teach them how to think. Come on now. How do we dare do that? As the years pass, these priceless qualities fade. We become more cautious, less eager, and accumulate deeply rooted habits and fixed attitudes. It took the late Russell Schweikart, a momentous effort to get out there in that universe, out in that sky, out in that space, to see the world in a different sense. The Air Force used to be a revolutionary organization. It no longer is. You started as a revolutionary organization. I didn't little do with where you've come today. My toast is to you. My congratulations are to you, to your leaders and everyone else. You're a vibrant, exciting organization. I'm proud to have had just a little part in its planting the seed. But the credit belongs to all of you. The question now facing you is, where do you go from here? Don't derisively look down on that micro. It's not just a machine. Look, we don't talk about pencil-based learning. We don't talk about book-based learning. Why in the hell do we talk about computer-based learning? The microcomputer is a tool affecting every facet of our existence. And if we're not familiar with this tool, look what happened to poor Poindexter and North. They didn't understand the tool. They didn't know how to erase those damn files. Thank God for their computer literacy. But these are your tools. And if you don't become familiar with them, if you don't find out ways that the designer never thought of using them, you're losing the most powerful tool that was ever created. Look, I think the microcomputer is not even greater than the printing press. I think it's on the same level of the Copernican revolution, which changed man's view of himself and nature and the universe. And I think it'll have that drastic an impact on our society. It can become the most civilizing influence that we have had to date. It can amplify our intelligence and our ability to manipulate symbols. Pamela McCordick, in her book, The Universal Machine, which I recommend to you, traces the long intellectual tradition that began with the human language itself and encompasses the golden age of Greece and the burghers of 15th century Northern Europe and America's own Henry Adams. On a personal search for a bridge between C.P. Snow's two cultures, the humanities and the sciences, she sees the computer as the bridge, the machine of the century, the hope of the future, and I agree completely with her. She asks, what shall we call the electronic text? She never really answers the question, leaving it to our imagination. So I will wrap up by saying Arthur Miller, in his review of Death of the Salesman, in his commentary on it, said we have met on the plane of the imagination. That little spot that could also be that little chip That little spot that Schweikert was talking about could also be that little microchip, or that little micro could be the CD-ROM, or the laser card, or the newer device that's right around the corner. I don't know what it's going to be. Or the soft strip, loaded with hypertext. There's no question in my mind that compact disc technology will be prevalent throughout the world. It can contain everything that we have been and are about to be. Compact disc players and compact discs will entertain people throughout this global village of ours. No, village is the improper metaphor. That's McLuhan's. Margaret Mead had the proper metaphor 40 years ago. She talked about the wired city as the world. It's not the global village. Village is primitive. The wired city is what we have. Whether its educational potential will be realized remains for us to determine. Alan Kay, the Apple fellow, said, if you want to predict the future, invent it. So I leave you with this challenge tonight. 50 years, 25 years from now when I come back to talk to you and share reminiscences with you, will you have participated in the invention of the future? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabe, for forcing us to face the future. And we have for you a small memento of this special occasion, which perhaps you can envision is a super compressed compact disc, and you can record on it not only the past 25 years, which you've shared so richly with us tonight, but when you come back in the next 50, you'll probably have figured out a way to shrink even that and bring us even more of your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I have something else for you. Step over here. And for Gabe, we have a special certificate of our appreciation for being with us on our 25th anniversary.
Thank you.
This special event on our 25th anniversary includes the awards challenge and the results of NSPI's awards process with integrity and caring and with superb results tonight. Diane Finch-Smith, Sam Schmickler, Lynn Standen, Ron Fillinger, Jim McCampbell, John Swinney, I need the last one, Pat Paloran, Catherine Jacobs. Thank you. Here you are.